A little bit about Talk IT, a training partner with a difference. Talk IT plays a vital role in providing learning solutions that result in reduced costs and improved efficiency. This equates to increased innovation. Innovate, adapt, accelerate through training and certification. The stats. 65 instructors are available at all times. We have the biggest leading market share with our international vendors. 6 different training delivery methods are available, and 15,000 students are trained yearly. Talk IT is the first AWS authorized training partner in Africa. We have successfully certified thousands of students on various AWS courses. We provide authorized instructor-led training, virtual instructor-led training, certification, and enablement solutions. A few of our training areas are analytics and data management, application development, cloud computing, cybersecurity, and robotic process automation. If you'd like to get in touch, visit us on our website or email us.
Hello everybody, welcome to the third episode of What's the Future, brought to you by Amazon Web Services, Talk IT, and Suits and Sneakers. If you don't know by now, my name is Mark Sham. I'm the founder and CEO of Suits and Sneakers, and I'm also going to be your host for the entire series. So I always love to start just by saying thank you to each and every one of you for taking the time, especially to attend live. It's a really big deal, especially as people start to get a little bit more busy and chaotic as we move lower down in the levels of lockdown here in South Africa and around the world. I want to just kick off by thanking everybody who's supporting the series so far. It's been such a whirlwind, such an experience for us. Learning curves, big and small, it comes, let me tell you. So today I am coming at you live from a brand new studio that we've created, the Suits and Sneakers studio. I just want to give big love to the two guys in the back over there, Nico and Mike, who are always making sure that everything runs smoothly. You have no clue how many moving parts there are to make sure that a production like this does its thing. So welcome, thank you for being here. And for those of you who are watching a recording, it's actually becoming the preference of choice where most people simply want to wait to watch the recording afterwards. Right, so without further ado, let's get into it. As you guys know, the guest speaker for today, for the third edition, is a friend of mine and colleague named Brad Shorkend. Besides being a beautiful friend, an intellectual creature of note, someone who's able to articulate his points with immense depth and understanding, one of the favorite things that I've loved about Brad's topic today is he's really catching on something that is so relevant in the times that we're facing. This idea of being still human in a world that is just incredibly powered by tech. Anyways, before we get into there, what I want to do is I want to go to the polls. So this is something that we've been trying to experiment with. I want you just to bear with me. I'm going to quickly step forward. And what I'm going to quickly do is just activate the polls. So the first question that we have is office and home preference. Give me 1 second. I'm launching the poll right now. Won't you guys just go ahead and while you're part of it, won't you just give us a little bit of a get involved there? Let's have a look. I'm going to give you, say, 30 seconds or so more. Awesome. They're coming in. I'm seeing them coming in fast. Another 10 seconds or so. Thank you so much. Awesome. I'm just having a quick look there. Okay, I'm going to give you guys 10 more seconds. And we're ending it. Just for time's sake, I'm going to end the poll, and then I'm actually going to share the results. So this is what you guys voted for. This is the response set. I've got 1 or 2 more polls to get through. Then I'm going to introduce Brad. We're going to get on with things. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing that. Then I'm going to go to the next poll. Would love to know. Are you guys ready? Off you go. Thank you so much for being involved. It's just such a valuable thing that we can do to literally survey you on the spot. This is the beauty of technology. I'm going to give you another, say, 15 seconds, and then I'm going to show you the results. So it'll be great for you guys to see also. Alrighty, guys, just for time's sake, I have to end this. I'm going to end that poll right there, and I'm going to share the results with you. This should be showing you right now exactly where we're at. Are you guys seeing it? You can just let me know in the chat section if you are indeed seeing the results. All right, one last poll, and then we're going to get moving. You guys ready? This is just the one for our sponsors. I'm going to launch it right now. All righty, you guys have got 25 seconds, and then we'll be cutting. This is the last one. Just having a look. It's amazing to see how quickly it gets done. Okay, 10 more seconds. Alrighty, let me end this here. I'm going to end it there, and I'm going to share the results with you. Right, so there you go. I'm going to literally stop sharing this entirely, and I'm going to close this. We're going to get into it. So, like I said to you, thank you so much for being here. Thanks for being part of the polls. This is the third episode of the What's the Future webinar series brought to you by Amazon Web Services, Talk IT, and Suits and Sneakers. The idea, the aim, the purpose of this series literally has just been to try add as much value as we can to people on the other side, you. We were trying to think of both speakers, topics, and content that we could give to you that would make a difference, especially in these unprecedented and weird times. So we hope you've done that. If you're joining in new, you are still able to watch the recordings of the two previous episodes, and you will get an email straight after this to just remind you of the links, etc. So what I want to do is get straight into it now. I want to introduce you to the man of the hour, a man by the name of Brad Shorkend. This is what you've all tuned into. Brad is an author, speaker, and world-class facilitator. I'm actually going to let him do his thing and explain all the details, but here's what I want you to know for sure. Brad has really been giving a heap of thought about this idea of the human aspect in a very tech-focused world. So without further ado, we're going to bring Brad into you, and we're just going to let him come through as soon as we're done with this short clip.
Whether you're working in retail or real estate, with financial data or photos, your business depends on applications that run reliably and securely at a cost that scales with your needs. Amazon Web Services provides a complete set of cloud computing services accessed via the internet to help you build and run those applications. At AWS, we provide compute, storage, and database services which enable your organization to quickly provision the IT resources it needs without significant capital investment. Pretty much everything you would want to do in a traditional data center is available with AWS. But all our services are available on a pay-as-you-go basis with no upfront capital expense. Instead, you'll find highly durable storage services, low-latency databases, and a suite of application development tools which you'll only pay for as you're using them.
Good afternoon, everybody. So it's an absolute pleasure to be here, wherever you might be in the world, and to have this conversation with you for the next 45 minutes to an hour or so. It was 1624 on the 26th of March, 2020, just hours before we were going into lockdown that none of us really understood. But we were literally under the threat of being arrested just for leaving our homes. This is a real WTF situation, but I've been having my own WTF moment for a couple of weeks prior to this. I had a situation where I saw this coming, and the connectivity to my home in the suburb that I lived, the ADSL lines that had been perfect for years had suddenly gone down, and we were told that they were not being replaced. So my WTF moment, knowing we were going to lockdown, was where's the fiber? Because my concern was, how am I going to survive this situation of being locked down, being stuck at home, needing to connect with the world, needing to get online, needing to communicate. And so just at 1624, with just a few hours, my home lit up. I had connectivity. And so it was that I could actually engage. But the thing is that this for me was massively disruptive. And we've been hearing about disruption for years now. Disruption has been a theme, and it's been a conversation around organizations being disrupted and disruption being a theme around keeping up with what's going on in the world. But this was a different type of disruption. This was a disruption that was actually a dislocation. This was a dislocation of being disconnected, of being separated, of being apart from each other, and having to find a way forward. And I knew that the result of this was going to be this disconnection. It was going to look very much like it looks on the right-hand side of the screen or the left-hand side as you're looking, to being alone at home, having to manage life. And what's interesting about this is this conversation around remote working. This is not remote. And it's important to understand that as we kick off, this is not remote. Remote is where everything's working. Kids are going to school, life carries on as usual, and we can go to the shops, we have freedom. This is remote COVID-19 style, where people are not working remotely at home. They're rather at home managing life, trying to get their jobs done. Managing life, trying to get their jobs done. We had a moment where we were told, get your stuff sorted out and kind of make it work. And we had to do things very quickly that previously we didn't think we had enough time to do. Until we had no choice. The question I'm asking is, what would you have done differently if you had more time? You now do have time. Things have loosened up a little bit. And have you taken those lessons and got the things in place that you wished you could have got in place before the lockdown happened? And this is for wherever you are in the world. There were a whole lot of additional disses, sensations, experiences, emotions that came with this dislocation. I'm not going to go through the whole list because there's that and there's more. There were lots of them. But the one that got my attention was disorganization. I believe this was going to be where things were going to get really complicated. The dis that was going to turn things upside down and be the most challenging because we were thrown out of our rhythms, out of our standard ways of doing things. And that brings us to the conversation about what is the future? WTF. Where to from here? No one really knows. But if you watch social media, everyone is an expert. Everyone has an opinion. And people are defending their biases. But what's the truth? What really is the truth? It's largely fear-based. And only time will tell. What's becoming clear is that this is not just an intermission. This is not just a short break and life will go back to as it was before. This is now going to bed in. This is how things are going to be. And I see people bargaining for, yeah, just another month or two, maybe another couple of weeks, and we'll be back to normal. This is now normal. This is now real. This is now where we're at. So we need to focus. We need to learn to think about a new future, become intentional around what are we going to be doing differently. And this is where the business continuity through human continuity conversation comes through. In order for business, a massive contributor to the economy to carry on, to grow, to bring value, how are we going to show up? How is humanity going to be re-accessed? How are we as bosses, colleagues, humans going to reignite? How are we going to nurture ourselves and each other? This is where leaders also need to shine. But each of us as colleagues needs to shine as well. This is a collective experience that we're all part of. Now, in our work at Still Human, we focus on understanding what organizations do to be great places for people to work. Our research, which we spent a number of years doing, was to go and look at organizations around the world and understand what do they do? What do they obsess about getting right to create incredible employee experiences? And we captured all of this into a model and published a book called We Are Still Human and Work Shouldn't Suck. And the essence of the book is the fact that humans are not a resource. They are the source of everything that a company does. And that's the essence of our work. Now, what does this mean when you come back into the workplace? What this means is that we need to move from a construct of viewing human beings as HR, human resources, to moving to a construct of RH, resourceful humans. Moving from HR to RH. We need to flip the script a little bit. And with this dislocation that we're all experiencing, it's become absolutely critical that we can learn to lead and from anywhere and learn from anywhere. We need to learn to lead and learn from anywhere. And this is where that whole conversation about becoming organized starts to creep in, because we've been so disorganized in terms of our leading, in terms of our learning. As a general theme, and I say that with evidence, working with business coaches or as a business coach with business leaders, working with people in all sorts of sectors of industry, small businesses, large businesses, extreme disorganization. But I want to bring the focus back to you. I want to bring the focus back to you, the human being right now. Where are you at? How are you self-preserving? What is your nutrition like? What is your sleep like? What is your time for yourself like? What is your workspace like? assuming you are in this remote, disconnected, dislocated context still, how are you self-preserving? And I ask this because what I'm seeing again is people are not looking after themselves. They're not looking after their own construct. They're not being in alignment with themselves. And the problem here is that you can't give what you don't have. And if there are people expecting from you, people in your organization, your family, you cannot give what you do not have. So how do you fill the tank of what it is that people are asking for from you? How do you fill that tank? Also, what is going into your heads? What is going into your heads? You need to be careful who you follow, because that becomes data. It becomes data that lives at the top of your thought process. It becomes what you push out. It becomes what other people experience of you. It becomes the story you start to believe in. And it's really important to understand that the contagion of focus and empathy, the contagion, the ripple effect you create, is as contagious as the contagion of chaos and negativity. What is the ripple effect that you want to be creating into the world? What is the message you want to be putting out? What is the impact that you want to be having? And so in this construct of becoming self-organized, we then start to have a look at broader organization. What does becoming organized as a team, as a business, as a company start to look like? I've described briefly above getting yourself aligned, but now what about others? What about the humans that we need and want to take our businesses forward? This is a conversation about performance. This is a conversation about, in order for businesses to perform, humans need to perform. It's not complicated. If there's no human performance, there's no business performance. So in order to perform, they need to get organized. And getting organized often requires a system, a recipe, a process. And that's what I'm going to share with you now. This is a construct that we put together at Still Human that we work with to help guide organizations to understand how do you narrow your lens? How do you become intentional? And this is something that's proving to be very powerful and very meaningful for our clients and for many people that we share it with during this COVID-19 dislocation readjustment that we're all going through. So the formula and the recipe, as I call it, is P equals W times A times A. Now that might look a bit foreign to you right now, but what that means is that performance is a function of willingness multiplied by ability multiplied by authorization. Are people willing? Are they able? And are they authorized, given permission, allowed, to, let's just get ourselves back here. Are they allowed to contribute? So let's have a look to start at the first one, willingness. Willingness kind of for me is an important part of this whole construct, because if people are not willing, what's going to happen is that you're going to be swimming upstream. So we need to understand, be asking ourselves a question: are the people you lead or work with being switched on and grown? Switched on means that they are being ignited, invited to participate, enthusiastic, motivated, connected, and grown, being invited to think and participate. Or are they being switched off and depleted? Switched off, being uninspired, demotivated, disconnected, not wanting to contribute, and depleted, meaning they're not being invited to participate intellectually. And this is not a static situation. This is a moving target. This is moving the whole time in terms of the experience people are having. And every touch point, every moment that you engage another person, every reaction you have, every conversation is creating either a positive or a negative experience for them, one in which they're being switched on and grown or switched off and depleted. And then the next question you've got to be asking yourself is, with what frequency are we going in which direction? And with what intensity? And what is the mark that that leaves? What is the indelible mark that it leaves on another human being? And what is the impact that that has on their ability to contribute, on their ability to help you and your organization move forward? There are critically no neutral moments. And it's so important to remember this. Every single moment has an impact. Now, when you understand this, we've taken all of this information and created a construct that we call Companies Behaving Awesomely, or a CBA. And a CBA is an organization that gets this right. Now, the definition for a CBA is a company behaving awesomely is an organization to which the best people want to come, do come, choose to stay at, and while they're working there, they shoot the lights out. This is our definition. They shoot the lights out. And all of this creates exceptional business outputs and kick-ass innovation. And that's obviously an essential component of taking a business forward, contributing positively again to the economy. And ultimately, they are proud to say that they work there. Now, Many organizations focus on this word engagement, and it drives us crazy. We hear companies saying, oh, we just spent millions of dollars on an engagement survey. And what it's told us is our people are 28.7% engaged. And we're going, okay, fantastic. You just wasted your money. Because now what do? We rather focus on experience, those critical touch points that create engagement or disengagement. But what are the experience touch points that you need to be focusing on? And this experience construct, the definition for employee experience, is the sum of everything in the work environment that creates how employees are made to feel, and whether they are being switched on and grown, as I mentioned, or switched off and depleted. Every single touch point is the employee experience. So what we wanted to understand was, what are the components that create this experience? And this is before a COVID world, and now in a COVID world. What are the things that create human experience? So we went looking. My business partners and I, and my co-author, Andy Golding, spent almost 5 years now. The first 3 spent putting together the model that we wrote about and published. And we call it the 12 essentials of a company behaving awesomely. And what we did was we went and found the best organizations around the world to work for, creating incredible employee experiences. And we asked them, what is it that you do? We watched them, we spent time with them. This is all over the world. Some organizations that you've heard of and many that you've never heard of. And we were looking for just 5. We thought 5 makes a good model. 5 became 7, and 7 became 12. And we then created this construct, this cellular construct, this honeycomb construct, because they're all giving space and structure to each other. If you understand how a honeycomb works, each of those segments, each of those components gives stability and structure to each other. We went back to the organizations that we had spent time with and interviewed, and we said to them, 12 feels very heavy. Which of these can we take away? And they said, you can't. You need to keep all 12 of these. They all matter. They are all critical. So we left it there. We then went a step further and Englishified, as we call it, the model. What frustrates us like crazy is we go into organizations and we meet the CEO or the HR team, and we said to them, so what is the organizational DNA? What are the values? And they say this, this, and this. And we see it on the website, or we see it on the behind the reception desk. We say to the CEO, okay, so what do you do with these? And they can't even tell us. So a lot of the time, these constructs, a lot of money is spent putting them together, but they don't get used. They're just really paying lip service. They're living documents. So we went and crafted our model to be, as I say, Englishified, to be able to be used constructively in articulating organizational culture, in creating leadership behaviors, in creating the way we do things around here, and ultimately creating the employee experience. Now, what's really important to understand is they are pushing and pulling on each other the whole time. They are all impacting each other. This visual that you're seeing, those arrows could be covering the entire drawing, because they're consistently creating an experience on the others. If I take something like meaningful communication, for example, if you think about it, if meaningful communication is high, the impact it would have on knowledge flow would be high. The impact it might have on ownership and accountability would be high. But if meaningful communication is low, you might find a significant dip in the experience people are having in terms of ownership, in terms of knowledge flow. And so it's critical to understand which of these impact each other and how. None of them live in isolation. And what we see too often is organizations spending huge amounts of money. Again, you can see I'm frustrated about the wasted budget on isolated projects. Either it's a big leadership program, which goes into our people push essential, or it's fancy new offices. We'll spend tens of millions of dollars on offices. That'll give us a great culture, great employee experience. No, it won't. It'll give you a pink and a purple couch. That's what it'll give you. It doesn't live in isolation. None of them live in isolation. So now that you've been introduced to the essentials model, and it's something to start to wrap your head around, and I'm happy to make these available via, if you want to subscribe to our website, we're happy to send these on to you. But it then starts to raise a question. We're now in a COVID environment filled with uncertainty. We started this thing with no idea what was going to happen, and we kind of just worked our way through it. So at times of uncertainty, it's kind of like trying to cross a busy rapid. And when you're trying to cross the busy rapid, where do you put your feet? You know, you look for the stable, secure rocks, and you put your feet there. And if a rock wobbles a little bit, well, at least you've tested it and you find another rock. But you're looking for the stable rocks on which you can stand. And right now, this is a time to be looking for stable rocks, looking for the things that you can be sure of, that you can be certain of. And the things we know you can be certain of are that the future will be very different, that we all will need new skills and talents, that there is opportunity in crisis. We can be sure that behaviors have already changed. We know this, we're seeing this, that a lot of the old that we knew will disappear, that digital is real, that people matter. These are things we can be certain of, and we need to start from a place of certainty. But then we need to apply flexibility. This is where we need to lightly put our foot on certain rocks and see what happens there. What happens in those additional rocks? Do they wobble, don't they? And things that we need to be flexible around are, when will the lockdown end? How long will the economic downturn last? How much will behaviors change? We don't know. We need to be flexible here. What might return to normal? We don't know this either. And how relevant might our business model be? We need to be flexible there. So in this complexity of things we can be sure of, things we need to be flexible around, what do we do in terms of human experience, in terms of the people we lead and work with? We take our essentials model that I've just introduced to you, and we put it on top of that complexity. Because what we know for sure is that the 12 components of what creates human and employee experience haven't changed. They didn't change. What might have changed is what you do inside each of those. So that becomes your security, your certainty, and then you have to be flexible inside it. So if I was to pick a couple of them and just share with you how that works. If we take the essential of shared purpose, this is one of the 12, which is proving to be such a critical component of experience right now. Shared purpose is kind of like when it's tempting to stop chasing your dreams, when it feels like everything else is crashing around you. The more people lose, the more they need something to connect to. And leaders and colleagues, it's our responsibility to make sure that people are getting the big picture, that they understand what makes us matter, that we can be energized and enthusiastic about ourselves as organizations and as teams in this time when everything else seems to have fallen away. Shared purpose, critical to be explaining it, articulating it, and letting people understand what makes them matter. If we then come back to the formula, I've shared with you a whole lot of what creates the willingness that's being switched on and grown. That's a connection to purpose. That's a certainty of where I can put my feet. All of that will create that people can be willing, can be wanting to participate. That's the first thing you want to be making sure you get in place. And I've shared with you a tool, the essentials model, for doing that. Now we move on to the second component of the formula, and this is ability. So if I go back to the essentials model and I pull one of the 12 out that I think serves ability, I've spoken a little bit about meaningful communication. And this is about being succinct, relevant, and authentic, and always being available to receive. Communication sets people up to know what they need to be doing or not be doing. And it sets them up to feel comfortable that they can proceed with clarity. I was watching on TV the other night a program called The Last Dance about Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls. And it's quite amazing how there's a visual there, as you can see behind me, of the scoreboard above the court. And they zoom a couple of times to the coach, and the coach has got all these notes and flip charts and boards in front of him, and there's a lot of information there. He knows the big picture. The players are just focusing on seconds and points, just tasks, seconds and points. Now, what changes the game, if you think about it, are your people in your teams focusing on seconds and points? Are they just task-oriented, or are they being shared the big picture? Linking back to the shared purpose I described previously. Are they just focusing on seconds and points, or are you communicating with them the bigger picture? Meaningful communication creates a construct whereby we do something that might never have been comfortable before. We share with people what our expectation is of them, but not in terms of what we want them to be doing, but the impact that we want them to be having. And this is tricky. As leaders, as colleagues, we often have never found the words. It's been so easy. We've been sitting next to people all day long, 9 to 5, their bum's been in their chair, and we're just banging them the whole time with do this, do this, do this. It's extreme micromanaging. It's almost command and control, and these are old leadership constructs. We need to let go of them. We need to learn how to communicate to people now what the impact is that's required. And as people in the working environment, we need to be able to meaningfully communicate at the end of the day, what was the impact that I had? What was the impact I had on myself, my team, my organization, my leadership? Not what did I do? Because what we're finding is too many people are putting in 15-hour days, being online, stuck in front of the screen just to prove that they're still being valuable and contributing meaningfully. That's not meaningful contribution. That's just spending 15 hours in front of the screen. But this is a function of communication and meaningful communication. Now, the thing is, you can't change what you can't see. In our normal working environment, we have access to all sorts of things, and even then we miss things. So something we do at Still Human is we conduct what we call an MRI. The MRI is an assessment where we take an organization through a detailed deep dive in terms of understanding the experience against these essentials touch points that create the employee experience. What is the experience people are having? And we produce a detailed document that then becomes your guide for how you lead, how you articulate your culture. Now here's the complexity. Right now you can't see because we're dislocated. So you can't change what you aren't even aware of. So we've got to start to find out what's going on. We've got to start to ask more questions. It's never been more important than now to be curious, empathetically curious, asking the right questions, and expecting that people will share with you where they're at. But that's asking people to be vulnerable. So they've got to believe that it's okay to share back. I'm going to detail that for you a little bit later. It's also important that this is not just a one-way communication channel. This is not just leadership or HR practitioners asking the questions of people, how are you doing? What's going on? It is your responsibility to share with your organization where you're at. This is a two-way communication channel. It's so important to go back to basics. And people say to me, well, what do you mean when you say go back to basics? Something as simple as picking up a cell phone or a telephone and making a call. Instead of getting stuck in Zoom and Zoom and Zoom and all the other channels and the technological channels that we're kind of becoming obsessed to, just make a phone call, reconnect. Something as simple as a meeting. Do meetings have structures? Do they have pre-agendas? Do people come prepared and organized, knowing what they need to achieve? Because quite ironically, I've been invited to so many during this period where I've left. I've said, I'm not sitting here because I'm not having a meeting about having another meeting. I don't have the time for that. I don't have the energy for that. So back to basics. And these are not complicated things, but we've forgotten them along the way. We need to go back to basic humaning in a world gone digital crazy. Another one of the essentials that I'll share with you that becomes fundamental in people being able to do what they need to be doing is ways of working. And this is the rules, the systems, the processes, and values that work and that we can all believe in. If we don't get these in place, how do we, in a dislocated environment, make it work? And in a hybrid type environment where some have gone back to work, some haven't. Now what do? We need to rejig. Any organization that hasn't had a look at what did we come into this situation with in terms of our organizational constructs, in terms of our organizational DNA, our clarity of purpose, our values, our winning behaviors, and hasn't looked at those in terms of their relevance, is definitely going to be standing on the back foot, expecting a different result that's not going to come to you. The other thing that this situation, this corona situation, that this dislocation has created is an amplification of things that didn't work, of where things were fraying, where there were weaknesses. Things have been amplified. Have you taken note of those things? Are you looking at those things? Have you done something about those things? Because those weaknesses will be the thing that ultimately breaks you. And we've been given the opportunity to find the frailties, to find the cracks. At the same time, we've also identified the real strengths, things that have given us stability, the ability to move forward, to not fall over, just to wobble a little bit and to bounce back. Now, are you building on those? Are you doing more of that? Have you even named the things that worked? And have you named the things that need to change? So all of that creates that people can have the ability to do what they need to do. I could also add into that equation another one of our essentials, which we call people push. People push is developing people. And it's all the leadership programs, it's the leadership styles, it's the education. Never before has it been as critical to be focused on developing and growing. And this is, again, not just for the organization, this is for the individual. If you're sitting at home, you need to start accessing informal education. You need to start understanding how to grow your skill set. So critical to understand what your learning gap is, because organization is in a current reality. It's moving to a new desired future state. Are you going to keep up? What are the skills and capabilities that you need to be in the game? Because your organization, I'm sorry, people are going to hate me for saying this, your organization does not owe you your job. Right now, the job market just got more competitive. People have lost their jobs. People have lost their businesses. People are going to be fighting for work opportunities. And they're going to be wanting to come and work at the CBAs, the organizations that do create that it's great for people to be there. You're responsible for your own upskilling and your own ability to perform. That's real food for thought. So we're back in the model and now talking about authorization. People being allowed to do what they need to do. The essential that I'd like to share with you for this one is ownership and accountability. And this is all about being comfortably leaving responsibility where it was given and taking responsibility when it is given. This is, again, shared responsibility, not passing hot potatoes on, people grabbing the ball and running with it, putting your hand up to get things done, which seems so counterintuitive right now when people are struggling for resource and capacity and still putting your hand up. It's unbelievable because you don't know just how depleted someone else is. I cannot tell you how much I appreciate and have appreciated during this time. I've been busy. I've been insanely busy reinventing our business. Our projects fell off the table as well. You know, could you imagine being more relevant than we are right now? We're a relevance advisory, helping people be human in a world gone digital crazy, and the bulk of our projects shut down overnight. Not because of a lack of our relevance, because clients panicked, understandably so. And obviously, we've had to go through the motions to explore how do we become relevant again? How do we reinvent our distribution channels? How do we let people find us and get to us? And how do we do what we do in this dislocation? So, the point I was making is I have so enjoyed having partners around me who, when I've been looking at the load, thinking I'm just never going to get this done, and suddenly it's done because they knew the importance of it. And there wasn't even a need for communication on those items. It was just so obvious. They took the reins, and I'm so grateful for that. It's really important to understand that we are also in an experimental time. Everything that you are trying is an experiment. Everything that you're trying needs to be viewed through the lens of what are we learning, how are we adapting, how are we adjusting, how are we adjusting? But you need to make it safe for people to experiment. And this is where I go back to the model. And I share with you the construct that we created, because if you take those 12 essentials working together and you have each of them working at the highest level of experience, what you do is you create an environment of trust, an environment of psychological safety. And this is where people can experiment. This is where people can try new things. Because in a world where we need to be moving into the new, people need to be allowed to do that. You cannot say we have a new normal, but not invite people to participate in experimentation. And psychological safety is a critical construct to be aware of. It is the belief that one will not be punished or humiliated for speaking with ideas, questions, concerns, or mistakes. You can see in the image here, there's a safety net for somebody who's about to jump out on the trapeze. It's the knowledge that you can take that chance, that you have a safety net, that you're not going to be killed for making a mistake while trying to improve things. Now think about this, those of you who lead businesses, those of you who work with teams, are you making it safe for the people around you to take some risks, to try some new learning, to experiment a little bit? Do you feel safe? Think about it. Do you feel safe? What is the conversation you need to go back and have with the people you're working with around your own safety? This creates a theme and a construct around partnership. And our construct for partnership is having each other's backs no matter what, and you both or all know it. Having each other's backs no matter what, and you both or all know it. That means I can trust that under whatever circumstance, I'm covered. And both knowing it or all knowing it means we bring security. We give each other reason to believe, and we also don't bring insecurity. Because trust is a product of consistency. Trust for me is like this bucket. And we all start with a full bucket when we engage a new human being. We have no reason not to distrust them, other than our biases. Sometimes we have things that already create distrust. You just immediately distrust. But let's assume we have a full bucket. When you start to puncture that bucket with holes, the trust, which is power, starts to leak out of it. And there's a lot of research that's been done about how long it takes to fill those holes and to refill that bucket once trust is broken. So if you imagine having this bucket of trust and making sure that you do not puncture it in the construct of creating safety for the people around you and creating partnership, having each other's backs. This will require, in this construct of creating that people are authorized, that also we know there's certain behaviors that will not be tolerated. And any organization, and think about yours right now, You need to have your unfiddle-withables, the things that you just do not mess with, your uneffable-withables. What is unfiddle-withable in your organization, and what will you not tolerate? It's important to articulate that. That then connects back to meaningful communication. That connects back to knowledge flow. This is all of the arrows starting to do their things. Nothing lives in isolation. Now, I say you need to have. Who is the you that I'm talking to? On our journey of doing our research, Andy and I came across a character. His name is Ralph, or rather Andy did. Andy went off to, Andy being my co-author, Andy went off to an innovation conference, came back from the conference, and she was angry. And I was in the office, and she started telling me a story and said to me, there was this guy there, his name was Ralph. Now, to any Ralphs out there where it says Ralph on your ID, no offense, but she said this guy just kept poo-pooing everything that he was hearing at an innovation conference. And she said to me, how do you deal with somebody like this? And I said to her, in our work, we're going to experience lots of people that are just getting in the way of learning and progress. So we did the mature thing, and we memed Ralph. And Ralph is this dude who stands for refusing to allow learning and progress to happen. So where might you be being Ralph? Where might you be the person getting in the way of learning and progress happening? So when we come back to this construct that I've shared with you around psychological safety, when you think about your own behavior, and you think about those 12 essentials, how are you showing up as an individual, as a team, as an organization, in terms of making it safe for people? What is the quality of your communication? What is the quality of your knowledge flow? Are you creating stoke, wow moments that bring people back for more? What kills us is we see people saying, we do it this way because that's the way we've always done it here. That will be the death of your organization, because that's the way you've always done it here, and giving the finger to new possibilities. But there's a problem. There's a problem that we're seeing, because many organizations are caught up in this trap that we call the chase. And the chase is right now going after profitability, productivity, when people are barely struggling to get their work done. Remember what I said at the beginning. People are at home trying to survive a pandemic, hoping to be able to do their jobs. So expecting more output from human beings right now is not the way forward. We're also not suggesting expect less. We're suggesting stand for people's greatness. Help them to grow. Help them to understand what they need to be doing. Help them to perform, the people around you. But don't get caught in the chase at the price of humanity and human beings. Don't get caught up in the chase. Now, your relevance as an organization is an interesting conversation at a time like this, because many organizations are being forced to think about, well, where do we fit into the world? And we've had a look at the research that we did. When we were writing the book, we found that the 12 essentials that you're now getting familiar with that create employee experience are the exact same 12 essentials that create innovation readiness. And innovation readiness is the thing that enables you to be awake. Awakeness is another one of the 12 essentials, being able to respond to what's going on outside you. And there's a tension between the two, between employee experience and innovation readiness, and how you're able to respond to your market, how you're able to innovate to your market. And ultimately, that loop is what you want to be working the whole time, the loop between experience and readiness. Because ROI is critical. Now you're thinking return on my investment. And I'm saying, what investment? I didn't speak to you about investment. ROI in our world is the risk of ignorance. What are you not paying attention to, and what is the risk of ignorance? So that brings us to the closing component of this, this framework, this recipe, this formula. But for me, that's not enough. Because yes, we've got 3 core focus areas: people's willingness, their ability, and their authorization. But we need to sustain this. I mentioned the long game. How do we do this into the long term? How do we become sustainable? And for me, you've got to assess what you're doing in terms of creating willingness, ability, and authorization against your relevance. Everything you do needs to be measured against, are you diluting the impact of all of that effort? Is what you are doing relevant? You've got to keep asking yourself those questions, because that's where the sustainability lies. So that brings us back to our starting point. WTF, what's the future? But I believe that the question you should be asking, the WTF you should be paying attention to, is what are they feeling? What are they feeling? WTF. Because in a future of deep tech, we need to double down on deep human. We need to embrace technology, but not become it. We need to, however, embrace humanity and embrace our fellow human beings, but don't become the technology. So in this WTF construct, there is no new doing without new thinking. And we need to start to have a look at where are we getting in our own way. A critical thing to be considering is that, dear human, business culture and human experiences constantly being created, either in spite of you or deliberately by you. Take care of each other. Thank you.
Awesome. Let me get in here for a second. Let me just jump in. Hello, guys. So we are literally going to go to the Q&A, and I think we're bringing. So what I want to do is I want to encourage you to shoot in there. Let's get you down there, Brad. Do you guys want to shoot any questions that you may have with us, and then we'll start answering. You can do it either in the chat section, or you can do it in the. There's a key there.
There's quite a lot here in the chat as well.
Yes.
There's a lot going on there. Okay, guys, throw some stuff into the Q&A. It'll make it a lot easier for us to find, because we're there now. Even stuff you put into the chat.
Well, there you go.
Pop it into the Q&A. Is our book available on Audible? Not yet. We're toying between, do we do the second book, because we're very busy researching, or do we create an audio book? So for now, it's not on Audible. I'm happy to come and read it for you, but that'll cost a hell of a lot of money.
Yeah, we seem to have a, great. Okay, let's have a look here. There's just a note to my team. There's a key here. There's a virtual background. Sorry, no. This is kind of like I said to you guys, we're constantly experimenting, and for some reason when you go to that, I don't know if you can see it.
What are you looking for there?
Do you see that there? Anyways. Good point. Okay, let's have a look at some of these questions. You want to pick one here?
Okay, so Lynn, no. Okay, there's a question from Nicola Fenn. Lynn asked, thank you, Nicola. Many businesses are going through restructuring right now. Any tips on how to apply some of the 12 points to staff going through uncertain times? Great question. So what we're finding is for employees going through uncertain times, the thing that is creating the most stress is uncertainty. And they're asking questions, people are asking questions that you may not be able to answer. The biggest question people are asking is, will I be able to keep my job? Is my job safe? Now, no organization can guarantee you that your job is safe. We've watched waves of retrenchments happening in organizations that thought they were secure. So what I would suggest for those of you who are managing restructuring and are trying to help your employees, transparency, which is very hard, it requires vulnerability, but let them know what's going on. Let them know what you're doing, because it enables people to plan, it enables them to prepare, and the angst of uncertainty is actually way more dangerous and unhealthy than the angst of knowing what possibility looks like. So that is one in terms of meaningful communication. The second I would do is also check in with people what they need. Be asking people what they need, be asking them how they are doing and what do they need. A lot of people are struggling and not speaking. So all of that falls into meaningful communication. And you might have seen on the model GAS, it's all about giving a shit. I cannot express to you how much you need to be thinking about what does giving a shit look like in this world right now? And are you doing those things for people going through a restructure?
Okay, great. So, you know, it's really interesting to me that it shows you that the more we kind of go into, the more we get so technical. Now COVID has really just pushed this, hasn't it? COVID has taken all the things that you were talking about and it's effectively accelerated it and amplified it. Is that fair to say?
So it's exactly that. These were themes that were starting to come up. They were starting to become relevant over the years. They were themes that were largely ignored. The theme of remote working. Many organizations have dabbled with it. No one ever took it seriously. No one believed it could work. Now suddenly overnight, it was made to work. Also the emphasis on better humaning. So many organizations are guilty of not paying attention to the human beings. I know so many people, executives and employees across organization who suffer burnout constantly. And I'm always amazed at the level of dedication that they demonstrate to the organizations, but it's not born of passion, it's born of fear. And that's an organizational negative construct that people are so dedicated because they are so fearful. And that's not an organization showing gas or a leader showing gas. So how do we start to gas and care constructively?
So there's a question here from Bruce that I think is really relevant. How do you motivate staff in these times when our businesses are on their knees?
It's probably one of the trickiest questions we've been asked during this entire period. I think there's a psychological construct around what we are planting into people's brains. And what you're looking for is businesses are on their knees, but we essentially need to be doing whatever we can to keep moving forward. That is a product of innovation, of people coming up with ideas, and that responsibility can't be only on a business owner or a business leader. You've got your own stresses if you're a business owner or business leader. Your mind might also be shut down. Your creativity is also shut down. You need to be switching on the people who work with you to participate, to be coming up with innovation and ideas as well. That in itself actually is motivating. When you're inviting people to participate and saying, hey, where do we go from here? How do we innovate from here? What can we do differently? As opposed to letting them wait for you to come up with it all. I find that's one of the most powerful ways of actually motivating is participation, not rah-rah.
And I would say that there is something to be said for being very vulnerable right now, isn't there? For saying because the reality that we're sitting in is that we are in this really weird spot. This is unprecedented in what we're going through with COVID. And I sometimes think there's two things to this. One is we have to get going. We all have no choice. What is the alternative? That we just lay down, die, and forget about it? I don't think that that's an option. So I think we kind of have to go, look, this is a really shitty situation, but we're going to get on it. And it's also okay to be in a spot where we don't have all the answers, but what's the alternative? And I think if we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, very honest with each other, and then just kind of pick ourselves up. We have this mentality that everything has to be right all the time. And it's just not true. We're not in that situation. So I think that's a great one. Dawn asks, and I'm going to answer this here, how would you suggest leading from behind when management is still old school or doing things as they say they have always done?
I've experienced in the past couple of days quite a few people who've come into contact with our work, read our book, seen our webinars, saying it makes perfect sense, but my leader will not change. Just yesterday, somebody who has been in a hospital recently for burnout, severe burnout, said to me, she's at work. I said, what are you doing? Why are you not at home? She said to me, no, her boss insists on seeing her in the premises all day long when she can easily work remote. And I mean, I obviously had some choice words about that, but that mindset, what I would say, and this is the worst time to be saying it, is get the hell out of there. Because, but again, I'm saying that cautiously because I know right now everybody needs a job, but it's not going to be, I would just dig in, get through this, and start looking for other opportunities. And that's another interesting point. So people say, oh, there's no opportunities out there. There are lots of opportunities out there. There's a lot of change going on. How do you make yourself relevant? But I would say get out of there. That's not a long-term place for you to be. If leadership will not change its mindset, that place may not be around for very much longer. Find another place to be. And it's harsh advice.
Yeah, and I guess the balance is right now that people do need to, I mean, people are kind of in a tough spot because COVID times. And so I guess there's this balance that we have to play between, you first have to do whatever you need to do to survive, but that doesn't stop you from thinking long-term and even short-term about your future. There's a great question. I'm going to really put you on the spot here because I think I want to answer the really difficult questions. And it's an anonymous attendee, which I think was a good move. And they asked, what would you suggest for organizations who have had to impose salary cuts but are asking more of their people? How do you motivate people who are angry? And I think because I'm putting you on the spot with this because this must be happening all over the country.
So it is a very good question. Thank you, Anonymous. So situation one, salary cut. We are angry because we've been personally compromised, but I would shift that anger to gratitude because many people weren't given the option of a salary cut. They were told we are closing or we are firing you. So step one, gratitude, because that shifts your energy and your entire internal construct. And I know it's hard to be grateful when you've just had an experience that's impacted your lifestyle, but think about what else could have happened. In terms of the organization then asking for more, again, organization is asking for contribution to view it as keep you in your job because the possibility is the organization could also disappear. So it's shifting to being relevant and impactful. But what I would suggest is start to invite participation of leadership, of teams, of colleagues, for how can we be more effective and more efficient in terms of delivering on that more. This is a time to be innovating. We do need more. As I said, more is part of survival, but be careful not to get caught in the trap and the chase. Start to innovate about how can you do things differently. Let more be a product of different, more output, not more bum and chair. That's innovation. And it's hard, but we've got to start thinking about it.
I mean, that's a really good point that you're bringing up there. There's no question about that. And I think we've just got to keep in mind that a large portion of the pain that we're experiencing happened through no fault of our own. And I can just tell you, as a small business owner myself, in these times, it has been the most brutal thing trying to balance not having a mental breakdown, one, two, trying to look after staff and make sure that's okay while reinventing the business. So these things, it's like sometimes I think we just have to have a little bit of empathy for the situation across the board. If we were to put ourselves in the shoes of management, you'd understand. There's a question here by Lutando asking, and I'll tell you why, it's a bit of a broad question, asking, how do you reinvent yourself in a world of uncertainty and complexity? I'm going to give you a go, and I'd like to have a go.
Okay. So I think you've got to make that question more specific. What are you trying to reinvent yourself as? Because what I see is, I see people asking really crazy questions. You know, I'm faculty at a couple of business schools, and we've been running online sessions, and we've had people asking desperate questions. So can you give me a business model that'll help me make money? Literally asking a lecturer to give them a business solution. I'm like, if I had a whole pocket full of those things, I'd be launching a whole lot of new businesses. So the reinvent yourself is rather for me, how do you re-relevance yourself? So it's about looking at the world, and many people have done this. Google COVID innovation or COVID pivots. Many people have done this. They've looked at what are the problems human beings are experiencing, and what have organizations done to shift with the current capability they have in the direction of solving and answering some of those problems. So that's where you've got an existing platform or existing environment or resource that you could re-relevance to solve a current problem. And other people have literally started new businesses from scratch using technology and various other resources to answer some of the problems that, that people are experiencing. Complexity is only as complex as you make it. If the word complexity was in the question, for me, it's about going to what do people need right now? And also being prepared to be nimble and flexible because things could change. So don't get overly attached. Solve a problem that you can see right in front of you. And I say that knowing that's not so easy, but plenty of people are doing it.
Yeah, I want to throw something at you. I've been thinking about this for a long time. So what's happened was pre-COVID, if we just go back there, the world was already moving at such a pace that it was entirely impossible to predict what the next 5 years would look like 10 years. Then COVID comes along, it actually exasperates that thinking already, and it kicks us in. And for the longest time, I've actually been saying to people, I don't think even if you look at the schooling system, that we can teach kids anymore what to do. We can't teach people what to do anymore. It's about teaching them who to be. I think probably one of the biggest things, the defining point of COVID for me, has been that the number one skill of the future is going to be quite simply your ability to learn, unlearn, and relearn. Because if you can get that, if you can first get your psychology and your mentality correct, and you are constantly reskilling yourselves and understanding the system of value creation, and you are constantly trying to skill yourself according to what's valuable to whom, and trying to solve a problem for people, then this is not going to be that difficult for you. But when you're looking for these linear individual skills that you must learn, like teach me, should I do coding? That's not the thinking that we need. You need kind of me understanding what value creation is about. And I'm actually doing, I'm actually hosting the last session of this webinar series, and I'll be talking about value creation. Let's have a look. Let's maybe go for one more question for Brad. I just want to read them here. Okay, I think let's do it this way because there's so many questions coming in, but we've kind of answered them a little bit. Let me give you this for time's sake. I want to leave you with the last word before I kind of close off and just say thank you to everybody. Brett, what's the one thing, you've got all these people sitting online right now. What is the takeaway, or the where to from here moment that you want them, or the parting note that you want them to kind of stick in their head over the next few days?
I think for me, the parting note, and as I said, we're happy to share what I put on the screen with you in terms of the models if you don't have them. The parting note is get some structure, because trying to be organized in a disorganized headspace is impossible. So tidy up where you work, tidy up where you live as best as you can. I know everybody's got a different situation, and tidy up your head. Tidy up your head means understand what it is that you need to be delivering in terms of impact that keeps you relevant. Understand what it is that you're doing for yourself to keep yourself well and healthy with inside whatever constraints you have. Tidy up, get organized, and work the system. If you go back to those two models that I've shared with you, and I hope you've taken screen grabs and whatnot, be thinking about where are you at in terms of your own ability, your own willingness, your own ability, and your own authorization. If you're not feeling authorized, how do you become authorized? If you're not feeling capable, how do you become capable? If you're not willing, what's getting in the way? And then check your relevance. So it's a simple thought construct that can completely change how you step into each hour and each day. Get organized. Thank you.
Bradley Shorkend, I have a lot of love for you. I really do. You have a very unique way of thinking about the structure. You and I come at things from such opposite ends sometimes, but I absolutely love the way you will take these things and dissect them and give them structure and give them relevance. And just for me, when I'm sitting here on the side, it's always funny, like I'm listening with two hats, but I absolutely love what you have to say. My ritual is that I hug people. I don't give a shit about COVID. I'm going to hug you, lover boy.
You've been breathing all over.
I've been breathing you all over. So any of you nannies who give me a hard time, I hugged him. That's exactly what I did. I'm my own boss. That's what we do. So guys, on a serious note, I want to just give you a lot of love and just say thank you so much for being here. Brad, thank you so much for being part of this.
Thanks for having me.
I want to close off just by sharing a few points of view with you that I think are relevant as we leave. This is the conclusion of the third episode. The first episode that we had with John Sarnay was called Future Now. The idea was, in these unprecedented times, how do we think about things from a very broad perspective? The recording is available, and I'll be sending an email out immediately after this with the recordings of all three, or the link to all three recordings. The second guest that we had was Eric Kruger. He spoke about leadership in transit. His angle and his thinking was that we are all leaders, and he was trying to get people to understand organizational structure from a kind of more hierarchical perspective. And then today we had Brad Shorkend come in and talk very broad and very narrow in terms of organizational structure with a real focus on this human element. And I think that everything that you spoke about today was so on point. So I really want to encourage you guys to take the time to go and watch the recordings. This is the beauty of technology. You can actually go and see it again and watch it with a different lens, because what you're going to find when you watch the recordings is you heard a lot of these things before when you were listening to someone like Brad the first time, but now new things pop for you. And I guess that's the absolute value of watching these things over and over. More broadly speaking, the whole aim, the entire point of this What's the Future series has been to try to give you some guidance, some thought process, to shift your perspective. I can't tell you, that's the thing that we're going after. So my hope, my prayer, if for nothing else, is that you got that value, that as you listen to someone like Brad and previously Eric and John, that light bulbs switched for you, that you saw things differently. I really want to encourage you, please give us a hand. Share the link details with more people. We're moving into episode 4 and then the last episode 5. Give us a hand, spread the word. The whole point of this series is just to help people in ways that are engaging and entertaining, etc. So really, I just want to give a huge love to Amazon Web Services and Talk IT. These are the guys who came together, put this all, they gave the faith. You know how hard it is for some big organizations to let a smaller organization like Suits and Sneakers say, no, maybe we shouldn't just focus on tech. Maybe we should kind of focus on the more broad problems that people are experiencing. Maybe we don't need a link between the content and the brand immediately, but we can try add value to them and create a link that way. And they went ahead with this. They gave us the space to experiment and do all the things that you kind of speaking about, Brad, in your presentation today. So I just want to give a whole lot of love to Amazon Web Services and to Talk IT for actually enabling this, for powering this, for bringing it all together. Thank you to all of you for being part of today. Like I said to you, you'll get an email with the link to all the recordings. Thank you for being part of our poll. Thank you, Brad, for giving of your time. Please go follow us. Please go share the details. Please just get involved. That's where we're at. But most of all, thank you for being here. So from us here in studio, here at WeWork in Sandton, in the Suits and Sneakers studio, hey, Mark and Nico, you two legends. Thank you for being part of this. Without Nico and Mark in the background, this would be an absolute mess. So that's it from me. I see there's still a whole heap of you sticking around, but for literal time's sake, I think we've done. I think we've had a good go. We want to respect and honor the fact that you've given us some space today. We would love to see you next week. A quick side note on that, I'm just going to tell you next week's, I don't know why it's gone, guys. There you go. Next week's guest is someone that I've been really enjoying speaking to in the behind the scenes, a man named Herman Singh. I actually had a Zoom call with him a little bit earlier this week, just to really gather where his head and thoughts were around what he's going to be bringing. And he's really bringing this tech adoption and how it's impacted us. He's got some of the most fascinating insights. I can't tell you enough. So really join us next week for Herman Singh, our fourth episode. He's going to be talking about all things tech, our adoption, how we can use tech to bring about abundance, the impact that COVID has had, but the saving grace being tech, how tech is really the savior here. But it's still a means to the end, as Brad speaks about at the same time. Balancing these points is so valuable. So I hope to see you next week. Thanks for being part of this. Thanks to Amazon Web Services. Big love to Talk IT. I'm Mark Shan from Suits and Sneakers, signing over and out. Thank you for being patient with us. Cheers.
Cheers, everybody. You do keep the notes, eh?